So the final talk is by Alberto, Hijazo, Gasco, and Maria Andria, and it's called The Excess and Motion Events in the Acquisition of L2 Modern Greek and L2 Spanish. And because we're starting a little bit late, I'll say that I'll give you an extra three minutes for this, and I'll give you 5 minutes warning before the end. Okay, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, so first of all, thank you everyone for staying to the last talk today. And yes, we are going to focus on Deixis, which is one of the areas that we find really fascinating, although it is very complex as well, in modern Greek and Spanish, which is a language part that has not been studied that much. And well, if we think about Deixis, and if we talk about Deixis, there have been different views about it in the literature. So it was considered in the 70s as a semantic universal, these verbs equivalents to come and go in the different languages. Although very early there were concerns about this claim, and it was said that there were several specific language-specific analyses were needed before generalizing what was Deixis and how these verbs were behaving. In fact, one of the important classifications is by Gatterkoll, and what she does is that she classifies languages depending on what is the deictic motion, or what is allowed to be the deictic motion. That is the goal of motion in the moment of the utterance. So according to Gatterkoll, there are 3 types of languages. Some languages allow both the speaker and the addressee as the deictic center, such as English or Greek or Catalan. Other languages only allow the speaker to be the deictic center, such as Spanish, Japanese, or Thai, and other languages without presuppositional content, like Indonesian. We've got here the 3 languages of the study marked in bold. In the case of semantic typology, in the Talmian and Slovene tradition, as you know very well, Deixis is considered to be a subcomponent of path. So path includes 3 subcomponents. One of them is Deixis, the other is vector, and the other is conformation. Although there are some authors who have argued for more relevance of Deixis in this framework. For example, Matsumoto, working in Japanese, claims that in several languages there is a specific slot for Deixis, or Filipovic, working in Serbo-Croatian, where there are specific prefixes that are very frequent. So the motion towards and towards the speaker or the addressee is quite frequently encoded. And that, of course, has implications for the thinking for speaking in terms of memory, translation, cognition, because they are more salient. In the case of second language acquisition, so well, as we all know, it is very difficult to readapt the thinking for speaking patterns, as we have been seeing in the workshop, in the different talks. Although motion, we know that motion is a prone domain for cross-linguistic influence, for this influence of the first language into the second or the other directions. And Deixis seems to be particularly challenging. So following up to what we were saying before, and the question that Janine was posing before, Deixis is definitely one of the areas where learners find it really challenging to readapt. So there are different studies working on that with different language pairs, like Polish learners of Spanish or Spanish learners of German. In German, there are also deictic prefixes that mark this motion towards the addressee or not. English and Mandarin learners of Japanese, and also my own work on Italian, French, and German learning Spanish, and also our work with Spanish and Catalan learners of Greek. In this study, we are going to use these 3 different languages, and it is important to explain what are the differences between these 3 languages. So in the case of Spanish, as I said, only the speaker can be the deictic center. That means that come venir, the verb venir, come is only used towards the speaker, unless there are a few exceptions, mainly when the speaker can identify with the place. So normally we will not say, I will come later to your house, unless I'm at your house at this moment. But normally I will say, iré, so I will go to your house later. In the case of Catalan, although it is very typologically similar to Spanish and genetically very close, the pattern is different, and both the speaker and the addressee can be the deictic center, exactly as in English. So it is fine to say, I will come later to your house. And in Greek, it allows both the speaker and the addressee as the deictic center, the same as English as well. So if we say something like, θα έρθω μετά στο σπίτι σου, it is also acceptable. In Greek, there are also some specificities that have been pointed out in the literature, and also in a study that we are conducting at the moment, where we are asking speakers of the three languages about these concepts, and we are finding these claims as well. So the use of basically the difference is that the speaker or the addressee physical presence cannot be left implicit. So when the speaker uses έρχομαι, which is come, that implies presence. So basically, if I say, θα πας στο party, are you going to the party? In that case, I'm implying that I'm not gonna go there. If I say, θα έρθεις στο party, are you coming to the party? Then I imply that I will be there. And there are other contexts, like the accompaniment, where the use of go is normally not allowed. So, θα έρθω μαζί σου, I will come with you. It's very weird to say I will go with you. So our research questions are the following. Do L1 Greek speakers adapt their deictic lexicalization patterns to L2 Spanish? Do L1 Spanish speakers adapt their deictic lexicalization patterns to L2 Greek? And do early bilingual Spanish-Catalan speakers adapt their deictic lexicalization patterns to L2 Greek? And our hypotheses are the following. So we think that Greek L1 speakers will find it difficult to express deixis in Spanish as a second language. We think that we will find difficulties, that they will use come, basically, when they should use go. We think that Spanish L1 learners of Greek will find difficulties as well. So basically they will use go when they should use come, basically. And we think that Spanish Catalan bilinguals will acquire the pattern better than the Spanish monolinguals, because their pattern in one of the languages that they speak coincides with the target language pattern. And our methodology is the following. So we have 18 Greek learners of Spanish. They had a B2 level of proficiency. It was very important, of course, that they had all the same level of proficiency, so that we could make claims about their transfer or their cross-linguistic influence. And we also had learners of Greek as a second language with the same level of proficiency. In this case, we had half of them were monolingual Spanish, and half of them were Catalan-Spanish bilinguals. These bilinguals were Catalan dominant. And well, it was a bit difficult to find all these speakers with the same level, etc., etc. Then we also had a control group of native Greek speakers and a control group of monolingual native speakers of Spanish. And we also have a group which is not controlled because we are not testing second language Catalan, but we also have a group of Catalan dominant bilinguals that don't speak any Greek. So our stimuli were 4 videos. Basically, the videos were situations in which there were 2 characters, and well, one of them was moving towards the other, or one of them was calling someone to come to their place, or things like that. And then the participants had to retell the story in one of the 2 versions, taking the position of one of the characters, and they had to tell to the other character what had happened. basically that. And in the case of the bilingual participants, they did that twice in a counterbalanced procedure. So they did it in their first language and in their second language, although we will present here only the data for their second language. We also used a closed test in Spanish and the same, the translation in Greek. And we also included oral protocols to know their opinion about why they had chosen those options. And the analyses were mixed methods. So we had different analysis of narratives, the data from the closed test, the oral protocols, and also the scores in the closed test were analyzed with quantitative methods as well, with statistics. And I will leave the floor now to Maria.
Thank you very much, Alberto. So looking into the L2 data, the dominant finding in both the closed test and the narratives was the many cases of cross-linguistic influence that we found there. We identified also some cases of distinction in the closed test, and also some cases of avoidance of the diacritic motion verbs in the oral description tasks. But all these two cases were were minimal. The prevailing pattern was the transfer from the L1. So now we'll show you some more examples from the data. First of all, the cases of the cross-linguistic influence. Here we have a fragment of a narrative that a Greek speaker of a Greek L2 learner of Spanish is describing a motion event, and where the verb he produces the verb venir, to come, instead of the expected verb to go in Spanish, he venido a tu casa, instead of fui a tu casa, I went to your place, which is the expected pattern in Spanish. The same thing happened to the closed test, for instance, in cases, in gaps where the location was different from the place of reference, and we expected in Spanish the verb to go. Greek speakers tended to use the verb venir, to come, transferring that as the L1 pattern, as the example that you have here. Tengo muchas ganas de ir a verte. Greek speakers tended to use more tengo muchas ganas de venir a verte. The same for cases where motion towards the addressee was expressed, as the example that we have here, vendré nada más salir de trabajo. So the Spanish L2 learners used the verb to come instead of the expected verb, which was the verb to go. The same thing for cases of accompaniment, where in Spanish we expected the verb to go, voy contigo a comprar las entradas, where Greek speakers tended to use more vendré contigo, transferring the pattern in Greek, which is θα έρθω μαζί σου, I will come with you. When we ran the statistical analysis with the scores in the closed test, we found that there were statistically significant differences between native speakers of Spanish and Spanish L2 learners. The picture in the L2 Greek data was quite the same. So again, in the narratives, we found that Spanish speakers and Spanish Catalan bilinguals tended to use more the verb to go instead of the expected verb to come in Greek, as the example that you have here. Πήγα στο σπίτι σου και σου έφερα ένα μπουκάλι κρασί. I went to your place, instead of the expected verb in Greek, which is the verb come. The same for the closed test, when the location was different from the place of reference. Spanish speakers tended to use in Greek the verb to go instead of the verb to come. The same for the examples where motions towards the addressee was expressed. They tended to say to use more θα πάω μόλις σχολάσω, the verb to go instead of the verb to come. And the same with the case of the accompaniment, where, as Alberto explained at the beginning, accompaniment, when accompaniment is expressed in Greek, we usually tend to use the verb to come. I will come with you. So here we have the opposite. We have the use of the verb to go.
Maria, you have 5 minutes left.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So when we ran the statistical analysis, we found that there were significant differences between the native speakers of Greek and the L2 learners in the scores in the closed test. But when we ran the test between the two groups of L2 learners, we found that there were no significant differences between Spanish functional monolinguals of Greek and Spanish Catalan bilinguals. So they had the same results regarding the Greek deictic motion verbs. Both in the closed test, and the picture was also the same, the pattern was also the same in the narratives. So moving on to the discussion, our first hypothesis was confirmed since we found that Greek L1 learners of Spanish found difficulties in the expression of deixis. They transferred they presented cases of transfer from the L1, and they encountered difficulties in their rethinking for speaking. So even at a B2 level, there were frequent cases of the use to come towards the addressee. As for the second hypothesis, was also confirmed since we found that Spanish L1 learners of Greek also found difficulties in the expression of deixis. They tended to use more the verb to go instead of the expected verb to come, even at a B2 level of proficiency. So again, there were difficulties in their rethinking for speaking. As for the last hypothesis, we were expecting that there would be some positive transfer for the Catalan dominant bilinguals because of the similarities that their deictic motion pattern shares with Greek. Well, actually, this hypothesis was not confirmed since these learners also found difficulties in the expression of deixis. That was a very interesting finding for us. So we asked our participants in their oral protocols to explain a little bit and reflect a little bit on that. And what they say was, firstly, that they found these verbs, ir y venir, to come and to go, confusing, even in their L1. So they think that they are difficult to produce. And they also, since these participants come from the bilingual community of Barcelona, where the two languages coexist on an everyday basis, participants said that there is an everyday change as far as these patterns are concerned. So maybe something that they won't be that there wasn't acceptable before for them in terms of the use of these verbs. Now it's changed, so it's confusing for them. So what we can say is that here is that deixis is a difficult area to recategorize, even for B2 level speakers, which are advanced speakers. Some speakers are adapting to the L2, of course, but there are frequent cases of cross-linguistic influence from the L1. And what we also found is that learners seem to be aware of these difficulties. And that was was something that we found a lot in the oral protocols, and we had we got very insightful comments on the use of these verbs. Here we have chosen a couple of them, which we consider that they are quite representative. So here there is one quote of a Spanish learner of Greek who says, when I use these verbs, I think in the other way, in Spanish, and I perceive movement as I perceive it in Spanish. And here there is a Greek learner of Spanish who says, in this sentence, I would say venir, to come, because to me it is more natural. I come to see you, I come with you. But in Spanish, the verb ir, to go, is easier than venir. For this reason, I use it more, like in the sentence where I put, tengo muchas ganas de ir a verte. even if in my mind I was thinking the verb to come. So to sum up here, of course, we presented a small-scale study as a first approach to this cross-linguistic phenomenon, but we are currently collecting more data from different participants so as to increase our sample and gain more insights into this phenomenon. We also consider that it would be very interesting to explore not only the verbs to come and go, but also the causative verbs bring and take, llevar, traer, pao, ferno, which is something that we are currently working on. And that it would be also very interesting to include in the tasks the uses of second and third person, since our tasks here, our instruments, only included the use of the first person. And also another important thing is that future studies should also explore the explicit instruction of the L2 patterns, since we found that deictic motion verbs seem to be demanding and challenging and prone to cross-linguistic influence, and at least for this combination of languages and L2 learners. So we are currently working on a pedagogical intervention, and we are trying to see whether raising participants' awareness towards these differences can lead to a better acquisition of the motion verbs in these languages. And of course, we think that all these can have important implications for L2 teaching, in the sense that we can understand in a better way how we can teach motion in a second language by drawing on different pedagogical approaches such as focus of form or pedagogical translation. Thank you very much, Herr Stumen.
Thank you very much indeed to both Maria and Alberto. Okay, so plenty of applause from people. I'm looking for some hands up. Fribert is.
Yes, this time is my hands.
Well, you've got both. That's great.
Well, thank you very much, Alberto and Maria. A really interesting talk. This is more a comment because in my data, I have also plenty of information about the axis, and I haven't been able to analyze it. So this is, encouraging me to look and see what we have there, because we tested some, we created some stimuli thinking in the axis as well. It's true that it's what I just wanted to comment that for me it's still a struggle every time I'm gonna think about go and come, because come cannot be used. It should be go, as like when in English you say, I'm coming to your house. I say, but how are you coming if you are not yet here, no? So we don't pay, I don't know if in teaching books, this is something that it's relevant, that is taught.
So I can say from the Greek perspective, and then Alberto can go on with the Spanish one. In fact, in Greek, there is no specific explanation to that. So these verbs are taught as part of general vocabulary teaching. And that was, so that's why we found that there is a gap there. And we also think that sometimes teachers are not aware of the difficulties that these verbs can cause on L2 learners, because unless you analyze a lot their talk, and since they don't produce any kind of misunderstanding or very problems in the conversation, maybe that's why they are, they do not pay so much attention on them. That's as far as Greek teaching is concerned. I don't know, Alberto, about Spanish.
In the case of Spanish, it is a very similar situation. I think that these sort of verbs, because they are explained very, very early, like giving directions, like A1, A2, and they are not seen again in property, they are not really well taught. And when I have explained these sort of things with to forums or in forums with other teachers of Spanish as a second language, then the teachers say, yeah, that's true. There's not much material. There may be very few interventions, proposals, but not in the textbooks. And I totally sympathize with you, because even studying the Deixis, every time I use it in English, I say like, I did it wrong again. So yeah, that happens a lot. But it will be really interesting to see what you find in your data. Yeah, so please let us know.
Definitely, I will contact you, Alberto.
Yeah. Fantastic. Yes, please do. Thanks.
Great. Panos, I think you have a question. Please go ahead.
So yeah, thanks for the great talks and really interesting data there. I was just wondering, you mentioned, Maria, I think you had some variation in your L2 speaker data, such that some L2 learners appear to internalize the L2 construction, but some still carry patterns from the first language. Have you looked at what underlies that variation? Have you looked at any learner variables to see why some people are more successful than others in your sample?
Yeah, that was the same for the Spanish data as well. Well, as you mentioned in the previous presentation, and and in your talk yesterday, the length of, it's not length of residence, because our participants haven't spent time in Greece as residents, but the length of stay seems to play a role in that. So the more time they have spent in Greece, it seems that there's something there. In terms of proficiency, since they were all the same, we didn't find anything on that aspect. But I think it's that something that the next step would be to look more carefully on their length of stays in Greece, and maybe in other individual differences, such as, I don't know, some of them they are coming from the linguistic background, so they are more aware of these differences and similarities, because they look more into these kind of things. I would say these two variables to begin with.
Yeah, no, sounds interesting for sure.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, there aren't any more hands up at the moment. There are a couple of comments in the chat that I could possibly read out to you if you're interested. There are some comments really about the course material available for teaching these features. There's a comment from Reyes Lopez Garcia. There's absolutely no presence of Deixis in Spanish / L2 textbooks at any level, and Maria is right, instructors are not even aware of this. And then Evelyn Wiesinger, in schools, manuals for German L2 Spanish learners and didactic difference related to ir venir is always explicitly mentioned and taught in class.
That's very good. So we need to test the German learners of Spanish then to see if they do better. But yeah, that's great that they do that. In my experience in the UK, teaching in the UK, it's not present.
Okay.
Not normally present.
Yes. I had a very quick, easy question. If you expand your scope of Deixis, as you have to if you're learning Greek, is that more or less difficult than constraining it if you're doing it the other way around?
What do you want to reply, Maria? Or it doesn't seem to be doesn't seem to be complex anyway.
It seems to me, yes, that it's. So you're asking if we move. Can you repeat?
Yes, I mean, basically, if a speaker has to expand the scope of Deixis when they acquire Greek, is that more or less difficult than if you're a learner of Spanish and your L1 is Greek and you have to constrain it? It's just a very simple question. And
well, I think that from what we found is that was equal difficult from the two learner groups. The way I see, the way we see it, I think.
I think as well that because Deixis is so embodied in a way, so it's so core to our understanding of the language, that's very difficult to restructure either way.
Either way.
So
Okay.
we didn't find it no,
Okay.
we find it challenging both ways, really.
Right. Okay, thank you.